What happens when a country music legend steps onto a talk show stage and completely upends everything the hosts thought they knew about cancel culture, artistic integrity, and the meaning of standing by one's convictions? What happens when a conversation becomes so raw, so unfiltered, that it pushes one of daytime television's most outspoken personalities to the breaking point? Today, we're diving deep into the incendiary interview that concluded with Joy Behar walking off The View, leaving viewers stunned and sparking a conversation that's still resonating across social media. The studio was electric, buzzing with anticipation, as Billy Ray Cyrus made his way onto the set. This wasn't a typical promotional visit. He wasn't there to talk about a new album or to highlight the accomplishments of his famous family. No, this appearance was born from controversy. A recent podcast interview he had given had gone viral, igniting fierce debate about artistic freedom, accountability, and the courage to stand by one's work without bowing to public outrage. The show's producers had extended the invitation, anticipating fireworks. Joy Behar, armed with her trademark skepticism, was ready to ignite the conversation. "Billy Ray, welcome to The View," Joy began, her tone sharp, expectant. She didn't waste time easing into pleasantries. "You've been making waves lately with your thoughts on cancel culture and the idea that artists shouldn't apologize for their work. Let me ask you this, do you really believe that artists should never be held accountable for what they create?" Billy Ray settled into his chair, his casual demeanor hiding a steely resolve beneath the surface. "Joy, I appreciate you having me here, but I think you're framing it the wrong way," he began. "Accountability and forced apologies are not the same thing. If I create something and it doesn't resonate, I can acknowledge that. But I will never apologize for expressing something genuine simply because it makes people uncomfortable." Joy leaned forward, pressing. "But Billy Ray, we live in a society. Doesn't that mean we have a responsibility to consider how our words and art impact others, especially when you have such a massive platform?" Billy Ray's response was measured, yet firm. "We do live in a society. But when did living in one start meaning that everyone must think the same way? When did it start meaning that if someone's feelings are hurt, the speaker must immediately beg forgiveness? I grew up in Kentucky, and we were taught that words have weight, but also that disagreement is allowed. People are allowed to think differently." From the other side of the table, Whoopi Goldberg interjected, "Billy Ray, there's a difference between disagreement and harm. When someone with your influence says something that marginalizes a group of people, that's not just a difference of opinion anymore." Billy Ray leaned forward, looking directly at her. "And who decides what's harmful, you? The loudest voices on social media? Because from where I'm standing, it seems like a small group of people has gained the power to determine what everyone else can say, think, or create. Step outside their lines, and you're erased. That's not society. That's something else entirely." The audience murmured, divided between nods of agreement and visible discomfort. Joy didn't relent. "So what you're saying is there should be no consequences for anyone, that we should allow people to spew hateful rhetoric freely, and just accept it." "That's not what I said," Billy Ray replied, his voice sharpening. "What I'm saying is we've lost the ability to have honest conversations. Everything is now about who can be the most offended or shut down someone else the fastest. Let's talk about my podcast comments, but don't tell me to apologize for having a perspective that differs from yours." Joy's expression hardened. "Your perspective included claiming the entertainment industry has grown weak because people care about not hurting others. You said we've traded talent for sensitivity. Don't you see how dismissive that is of real progress we've made?" Billy Ray paused, letting the word progress linger. "Progress, you call it? I call it something else. I've been in this business for decades. I've seen talent sidelined for not fitting the narrative. I've seen artists censor themselves before even creating anything because they're afraid of backlash. That's not progress, it's fear. And art born of fear isn't art." Sarah, attempting to mediate, suggested a compromise. "Billy Ray, maybe there's a middle ground. Artistic freedom and awareness of impact can coexist." Billy Ray nodded respectfully. "Sarah, I agree nuance exists, but nuance is dead. You're either with the program or against it. And I refuse to adhere to any program that tells me I cannot speak my mind or create from my heart." Joy's voice rose again. "Speaking your mind is one thing, Billy Ray, but with millions of fans, many of them young, don't you have a responsibility to set a positive example? To show them it's okay to evolve and admit mistakes?" Billy Ray's jaw tightened slightly. "The best example I can give is standing on your own 2 feet. Not bending every time the wind shifts. My children have been through this industry's challenges, and I tell them be true to yourself. Don't let anyone dictate who you should be or what to think. That's the example I want to set, even if being true to yourself sometimes means being hurtful. Joy pressed, define hurtful. Billy Ray's eyes locked on hers, because nowadays, anything that challenges someone's worldview is labeled hurtful. The tension in the studio was palpable, an unspoken electric charge that left the audience and viewers at home on edge. One of the show's most candid stars, confronted with an unflinching defense of conviction and artistry, had finally reached her limit. And that is how The View witnessed a moment that would be dissected, debated, and remembered for years to come. I'm not talking about going out of your way to attack someone. I'm talking about expressing an opinion, telling a story, creating something that comes from your soul. If that hurts someone's feelings, I'm genuinely sorry they feel that way, but I'm not going to stop being who I am. Those words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding, as the tension in the studio became palpable. The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances, silently calculating how to navigate what was quickly becoming one of the most contentious interviews in the show's history. Meanwhile, Joy Behar, ever the provocateur, seemed invigorated by the unfolding conflict. So, you're basically saying that your right to express yourself trumps everyone else's right to feel safe and respected. Joy pressed, leaning forward with that unmistakable mix of curiosity and challenge. No, Joy, that's not what I'm saying, Billy Ray replied, his tone steady, but laced with growing frustration. And I wish you'd stop putting words in my mouth. Everyone has the right to feel however they want to feel, but your feelings don't dictate my reality. Your discomfort doesn't mean I have to change. We used to understand this. We could hear something we didn't like and simply move on. Now it seems like everyone is searching for reasons to be offended, hunting for someone to tear down. Joy laughed, but the sound carried no warmth. Oh, so now people who speak up about discrimination and prejudice are just looking for reasons to be offended. Billy Ray, do you hear yourself? This is the kind of rhetoric that allows real harm to continue. And this, Billy Ray countered, his voice firm, is exactly the conversation that proves my point. We can't even disagree without being accused of enabling harm. I haven't attacked anyone. I haven't said anything hateful. All I've done is suggest that perhaps we've gone too far in one direction. But that's no longer allowed, is it? Any pushback, any questioning, and you're immediately labeled the enemy. The audience sat in tense silence, every eye fixed on the verbal sparring taking place. Joy shook her head, her frustration apparent. You're not the enemy, Billy Ray. But you're certainly not helping, and frankly, I'm exhausted having the same conversation with people who refuse to see the bigger picture. Words matter, actions matter. And when you have influence, you have to use it responsibly? Responsibly, Billy Ray echoed, leaning forward, voice rising slightly. According to who? That's what I keep asking, and nobody seems to want to answer. Who decides what's responsible? You? The media? Twitter? Because here's what I think is responsible: teaching people to think for themselves, to question things, not to accept everything they're told just because it's popular or because everyone else is saying it. Alyssa Farah-Griffin, quiet until now, spoke with measured calm. Billy Ray, I think I understand where you're coming from. I've defended unpopular positions before, but isn't there a difference between encouraging independent thought and dismissing legitimate concerns that people have? Billy Ray turned toward her, nodding. Alyssa, yes, there is a difference. But when does a legitimate concern become an excuse to silence someone? When does protecting feelings outweigh protecting someone's right to speak? It seems to me we've crossed that line, and most people are too afraid to point it out. Nobody's trying to silence you, Joy interjected sharply. You're literally on national television, saying whatever you want. You have a platform. You have a career. So the whole victim narrative is ridiculous. Billy Ray smiled faintly, though the warmth didn't reach his eyes. Joy, just because I'm here doesn't mean the silencing isn't real. How many people are watching this right now, nodding in agreement, but won't speak because they're afraid of repercussions? How many artists are quietly changing their lyrics, editing their scripts, watering down their work to avoid being destroyed? That's the silencing I'm talking about. It's subtle, it's insidious, but it's real. Joy leaned back, crossing her arms. Or maybe, just maybe, those artists are being thoughtful, inclusive. Maybe they're growing, realizing the world doesn't revolve around them, and their desire to say whatever comes to mind. Billy Ray repeated her words slowly, deliberately. Thoughtful and inclusive, real nice. But in practice, it means conform or else. Conformity isn't growth, it's surrender. Sunny host joined in, her voice firm and calm. Billy Ray, as someone who has fought for civil rights, I must challenge that. Asking people to be respectful and considerate is not conformity. Communities have been marginalized for generations. Mindfulness from those in positions of power is about equity, not control. Billy Ray acknowledged her with a nod. Sunny, I respect your perspective. But equity doesn't mean everyone thinks the same way. It doesn't mean we tiptoe around language afraid to offend. I grew up poor, in a place where we had grit. We could hear things we didn't like and not crumble. We had thick skin, and I think we've lost that. Joy scoffed. Thick skin, Billy Ray. Do you realize how privileged it is to tell people to develop thick skin when they face real discrimination, real violence, real systemic oppression? Billy Ray fired back, unflinching. I'm not denying that discrimination exists or that people suffer. But what I am saying is this: claiming victimhood has become currency. We've reached a point where fear of offending is stronger than courage, and the loudest voices get to define the rules. The studio fell into a charged silence. Every word, every glance, every rebuttal underscored a deeper truth. This wasn't just a debate about words or art. It was a reflection of the culture itself, a battle over authenticity, courage, and the boundaries of expression in an age of sensitivity. And the more you can claim you've been hurt, the more power you have, Billy Ray said, leaning back in his chair as though stating something obvious. That's not progress, Joy. That's manipulation. The studio fell into a stunned, unnatural stillness. Even the camera operators, usually stoic, unfazed by the chaos of live television, seemed frozen in place, as if unsure whether the moment unfolding counted as drama or disaster. Joy's face flushed a deep, angry red. Her eyes narrowed sharp and blazing. Did you just accuse me of manipulating people? She demanded, her voice trembling with indignation. By talking about discrimination, did you really just say that? Billy Ray held her gaze, his own expression frustratingly calm. I said we've created a system that incentivizes victimhood, he corrected. I'm not talking about you specifically. But if the shoe fits, Joy, then maybe that's something worth examining. Joy stood so abruptly that her chair screeched against the studio floor. No, you know what? I'm done. She threw her hands up in exasperation. I am done with this conversation. I'm done with people like you who come on here acting like caring about others is somehow weakness. I'm done pretending this rhetoric deserves a platform. Whoopi lifted a hand, trying to steady the situation. Joy, let's just take a breath. No, Whoopi, I'm not taking a breath. Joy cut her off, shaking her head. I've done this show for years. I've talked to people with every viewpoint you can imagine. But there's a difference between having a different opinion and promoting the idea that empathy is some kind of burden. That compassion is control, and I refuse to sit here and legitimize that. Billy Ray didn't flinch. He remained seated, arms resting on his knees, watching her with a surprising calmness. See, he said, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment someone challenges the narrative, just challenges it, suddenly it's about platforming or legitimizing. You can't just disagree with me, Joy. You have to label me dangerous, harmful. That's the playbook, and everyone watching knows it. Joy pointed a shaky finger at him. You don't get to tell me what I know, and you don't get to sit there and act like you're some brave truth. Tell her when all you're doing is defending a system that's worked just fine for people like you. It's worked for you, Billy Ray. You've had success. You've had privilege. But for a lot of people, that system has been a nightmare. And now those people finally have a voice. And folks like you don't like being asked to think about someone other than yourselves for once. Billy Ray's voice lowered, almost soft. I've thought about plenty of people other than myself. I've raised kids. I've supported friends. I've helped communities. I've used my platform to shine light on causes I believe in. But I did those things because I wanted to, not because someone demanded it. Not because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. There's a difference between compassion and compulsion, Joy. And right now, we're living in a world of compulsion. Sarah leaned forward, trying to mediate a conversation that was quickly sliding into irreparable territory. Maybe we can agree that both things can be true, she said gently. We can value free expression and also value kindness. Kindness and consideration, sure, Billy Ray replied. But when kindness becomes a weapon, when consideration becomes a leash, we've lost the plot. That's where we are now. You can't say what you really think. You can't create from your gut. Everything has to pass through the filter of will this offend someone? And if the answer is yes, it disappears. That's not kindness, Sarah. That's tyranny dressed up in nice words. Joy barked out a bitter laugh. Tyranny? You think being asked to treat people with respect is tyranny? Billy Ray, you have no idea what real tyranny looks like. Real tyranny is having no voice at all. Real tyranny is being silenced because of who you are, not because of what you said. Comparing basic decency to tyranny shows how out of touch you are. Maybe I am out of touch, Billy Ray said. Or maybe I just remember a time when we trusted people to be adults. When art could be messy, complicated, offensive even, and we understood that's what art is. A mirror. Sometimes the reflection hurts. But instead of facing that, now we smash every mirror that doesn't flatter us, then wonder why everything feels fake. Alyssa stepped in. Her tone thoughtful. I think the concern is that some mirrors reflect harmful stereotypes, she said. Dangerous ideas that can reinforce real-world harm. That's not sensitivity. It's cause and effect. And I think the concern on my side, Billy Ray replied, is that we've become so afraid of potential harm that we've forgotten actual freedom. Anything can offend someone. Anything can be interpreted as harmful. If that becomes our standard, then nobody can say anything. We're paralyzed. And I'd rather live in a world where people can make mistakes, where they're free to be wrong, than in a world where everyone is terrified to speak. Joy began pacing, her agitation rising. You know what your problem is, Billy Ray, she said, stopping to face him. You think freedom means freedom from consequences. You think you get to say whatever you want and no one should respond. Of course people can respond, he said. Disagree with me? Tell me I'm wrong. That's dialogue. But what's happening now isn't dialogue. It's destruction. It's making sure someone never works again, making sure their name is ruined forever. That's not accountability, Joy. That's a witch hunt. Sunny shook her head firmly. Accountability isn't a witch hunt. When someone causes real harm, there should be consequences. Otherwise, what stops people from repeating the harm? The debate hung in the air, heavy and unresolved, the kind of moment that would live far beyond the studio walls. The question, Billy Ray began, turning his gaze toward Joy, is what you define as genuinely harmful. His voice was steady, deliberate, carrying the weight of decades in the spotlight. Because I've seen lives destroyed over a joke, over an opinion, over something someone said 20 years ago when they were a different person. I've seen careers ended because someone decided to dig through old tweets looking for ammunition. Is that your version of accountability? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks a lot more like revenge than justice. Joy's eyes flashed, sharp as a knife. Oh, here we go, the old tweets defense, she snapped, leaning forward, her voice sharp and deliberate. Billy Ray, if someone has a pattern of saying or doing harmful things, why shouldn't that matter? Why should we ignore their history, pretend it doesn't reveal anything about who they are? I'm not saying ignore it. Billy Ray replied, his tone calm but firm. I'm saying context matters, growth matters. People change, or at least, they should be allowed to change. But we've created a culture where one mistake, one poorly worded statement, one moment of imperfection, and you're done, forever. No forgiveness, no second chances, no room to be human. And that, he added, voice dropping slightly, that's terrifying. Whoopi leaned forward, her expression serious. Billy Ray, I've been cancelled more times than I can count. I've said things that upset people, I've made mistakes. But the expectation isn't perfection. What people want is acknowledgement. Saying, I see how that hurt you. I understand. I'll do better. That's not unreasonable, and it's not weakness. Billy Ray met her gaze steadily. Whoopi, I respect you immensely, and you're right, acknowledgement is important. But there's a difference between acknowledging something and being forced to grovel, publicly humiliate yourself, perform repentance for the masses. That's what I'm pushing back against, the performative aspect of it all. The way people must issue carefully worded apologies written by lawyers and PR teams. And even then, it's never enough. There's always someone saying it's insincere, that you didn't go far enough, you can't win. So at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, why play the game at all? Joy had stopped pacing, now standing behind her chair, gripping the back with both hands. Her voice was a mixture of anger and disbelief, because the game, as you call it, is living in a civilized society, Billy Ray. It's being part of a community. In a community, there are standards, expectations. If you can't meet the basic expectation of treating people with dignity and respect, maybe you don't deserve the platform you've been given. Billy Ray's eyes narrowed slightly. And who decides those standards? The mob. Because from where I'm standing, those standards change every day. What was acceptable yesterday is a fireable offense today. What was progressive last week is problematic this week. There's no consistency, no logic. Just whoever yells the loudest gets to make the rules. And I'm sorry, but I didn't sign up for that. Nobody did. Joy's voice wavered, the tremor betraying the mixture of passion and exhaustion she carried. You know what, Billy Ray? I've spent my entire career fighting for what I believe in. I've used my platform to speak for those who have none. I've taken criticism, faced backlash, and kept speaking because I believe it matters. And then people like you come on and act like all of that is just mob mentality. Like caring about people is naive or weak. I'm so tired of it. So tired. Billy Ray's expression softened, a hint of empathy creeping in. Joy, I'm not questioning your intentions. I'm not saying you don't care. What I am saying is that good intentions can lead to unintended consequences. Everyone wants to do the right thing. Everyone wants to be on the right side of history. But in that rush, we've created something oppressive. A world where people are afraid. And fear. He paused, letting the word linger. Fear is never a foundation for anything good. Joy shook her head slowly. No, I don't accept that. Asking people to do better. To think about the impact of their words and actions. That doesn't create fear. Fear comes from living in a world where people can do hateful things with no pushback. Fear is being part of a marginalized community and watching person after person get away with dehumanizing you. That's fear, Billy Ray. Not whatever it is you're describing. Billy Ray exhaled quietly, acknowledging the impasse. Then perhaps we're at an impasse. I don't think we're going to agree. You see one thing, I see another. And that should be okay. It should end there. We disagree, we move on. But it won't, will it? Because I've said things today that people won't like. Clips will be made. Outrage will follow. Calls for the network to drop me will come. That's the world we live in now. And I'm just asking. Maybe we should think about whether that's the world we actually want to live in. The studio fell silent. Every word, every pause, every glance reverberated through the room. It wasn't just a disagreement anymore. It was a reflection of a society struggling to balance accountability with freedom, empathy with expression, fear with courage. And for the audience watching, the conversation was a mirror, messy and uncomfortable, showing just how complicated the world has become. Joy took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was eerily calm, almost chilling in contrast to the chaos around her. You're right about one thing, she said, letting each word land deliberately. We're at an impasse. And you know what I've realized sitting here? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to sit at this table and have these same circular conversations with people who fundamentally don't believe we have a responsibility to each other. I've given years to this show, years to trying to make a difference, and I look at where we are now, and I just don't see the point anymore. Whoopi's eyes widened, her voice rising in surprise. Joy, come on now, let's not do this here. But Joy had already started removing her microphone. No, Whoopi, I need to do this here, she said firmly. This is exactly the kind of moment that shows why I can't do this anymore. We bring people on, we have debates, and nothing changes. People like Billy Ray go back to their lives believing exactly what they believed before, and viewers at home get more entrenched in their positions. We're all just yelling into the void. And I am done yelling into the void. The studio was suddenly chaotic. Producers frantically signaled from off-camera. The remaining hosts exchanged confused, apprehensive glances, unsure whether this was part of a planned stunt or the real thing. Billy Ray sat silently, his expression unreadable, watching the storm unfold. Sarah tried once more, her voice calm but insistent. Joy, please. Let's just take a commercial break and talk about this. Joy shook her head, setting the microphone down decisively on the table. There's nothing to talk about. I've made up my mind. I've been thinking about this for a while, and today just confirmed it. This isn't what I signed up for. This isn't the conversation I want to be part of anymore. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, just to keep the show going. She turned her gaze toward Billy Ray, her eyes piercing. I hope you're happy. I hope this is exactly what you wanted. Someone finally pushed to the breaking point by this endless, exhausting battle over basic human decency. Congratulations. Billy Ray rose slowly from his chair, his voice even. Joy, I didn't come here to push you to any breaking point. I came here to have a conversation. If you're leaving, that's your choice, and I respect it. But don't put that on me. Own your decision, a short, sharp sound that carried both exhaustion and defiance. On my decision, she repeated, voice rising slightly. I'm standing here owning it right now. I'm walking away from a job I've had for years, because I can't stomach one more conversation like this. I cannot sit through one more interview where someone tries to convince me that progress is oppression, and that caring about people is tyranny. I just can't. Her gaze shifted to the other hosts. I love you all, I really do. But I can't be here anymore. With that, she walked off the set, leaving the studio in stunned silence. The cameras continued rolling, capturing the shocked expressions of the remaining hosts and Billy Ray, who now stood awkwardly amidst the aftermath. Finally, Whoopi broke the silence, her voice strained and uncertain. Well, I think we're going to need to take a break. We'll be right back. But everyone watching knew that things had changed. Something fundamental had shifted, and there was no going back. Billy Ray slowly sank back into his chair, glancing at the remaining hosts. I didn't mean for that to happen, he said quietly. Alyssa's voice was soft, probing. What did you mean to happen? He paused, thinking carefully. I meant to have an honest conversation. To say what I really think instead of what people want to hear. Maybe that was naive. Maybe, in this world, honesty is too much to ask for. Sunny looked at him with a mixture of pity and frustration. The problem, Billy Ray, is that your version of honesty feels like an attack to a lot of people. Maybe that's the disconnect. What you see as truth, others see as harm. Or maybe. Billy Ray replied, his tone quiet, almost resigned. We've reached a point where we can't hear each other anymore. Where every word is a weapon, and every conversation is a battle. And if that's where we are, I don't know how we get back. The show cut to commercial, but the damage had already been done. Joy Behar had quit live on television, leaving a moment that would be replayed, analyzed, and debated for weeks. Opinions were divided. Some argued that Joy overreacted, unable to handle a difference of opinion. Others claimed Billy Ray had pushed too far, dismissive and provocative. But one thing was clear: the audience had witnessed something unprecedented, a raw, unfiltered glimpse into the fractured state of discourse in America. A moment where ideology, passion, and personal conviction collided, leaving no easy answers, no simple resolutions, and a silence that spoke louder than any words. The question lingered in everyone's minds: had Billy Ray crossed a line, or had Joy walked away too quickly? And in the quiet aftermath, the conversation, and the debate it sparked, was far from over.